Hello, and everything you have seen here has been an illusion. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. It's Pepsi month, and this week we are talking the 2006 film The Illusionist. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by my magical co-host, Andrew Williams. You ready for this one, Andrew?
Yes.
Classic. Andrew intro. I have like a paragraph to read every single episode, and you just get to hop in there with the yes, you bastard.
Right you are.
What's your history with this movie? Did you see it in theaters? Did you see it in close proximity to The Prestige? Or was this your first time visiting the movie this week?
Visiting the movie? My first
what am I saying?
time visiting?
Watching?
Visiting?
I don't know.
Revisiting?
First time watching the movie.
I mean, if you can revisit a movie, you should be able to visit the movie.
It would sound so weird to phrase it that way. Do you want to
Chris,
visit?
this weekend I'm going to go and visit the Civil War film by Alex Garland.
You going to visit the Civil War this weekend?
Yeah. It's a little interesting. This kind of came and went for me. I didn't really know about it. Like, I remember like seeing, I guess, like the cover at like stores or something, but like I don't remember it being in theaters, and I certainly don't remember going to see it. And I don't know if that's just because it got like massively overshadowed by the Prestige or what it was, but yeah, this one kind of just flew right by me when it came out. And then later I remember, I obviously saw the Prestige, and then I remember it kind of coming around, and I know I'd seen like clips of it, but I don't know that I'd actually sat down and watched it in its entirety until we were doing this podcast. So I was super interested to go in and check it out.
Yeah, I certainly didn't see it in theaters. I did see The Prestige in theaters, and I mean, I was and am a pretty big Christopher Nolan fan. Love The Prestige. And that movie in particular, I feel like ranks pretty high in his filmography amongst fans. Some people put it at number one. I mean, it's got some, well, prestige to it. But I always heard about this movie, The Illusionist, like in the conversation, like, oh, it came out at the same time. It's also about magicians. It's also a period piece. And I knew the cover. I didn't see this in theaters. And as we'll get into, I didn't realize really until getting ready for this podcast, it's an independent movie. So it definitely doesn't have as wide of a release. I did see it eventually. I probably rented it. I think it was before streaming, but I had already seen and loved The Prestige. And I was like, all right, I like Edward Norton. Let's check out this other magic movie. How similar are they? And I watched it, and I thought, well, they're not really that similar. And I was definitively like, well, The Prestige is better, so I never need to watch this again. And that was kind of my take on it back in the day. But I have heard much conversation about it since then. I know it's got its defenders. I was even doing some research this week, just kind of online, trying to get the vibe of this movie. It's got vocal defenders. It's, as we're going to talk about, pretty much well received by most metrics.
I think money by most metrics.
I think it's such.
Chris, why are we doing this?
Well, that's the thing. It fits our theme for this month perfectly. I mean, The Prestige is a Christopher Nolan movie. It made more money than this. It's a bigger release. It's the Coca-Cola. This is, I think, unequivocally the other period piece magician movie.
The RC Cola.
But that doesn't mean it was poorly received. That doesn't mean it was bad. We went through something similar with Deep Impact, because that movie also made a lot of money, but didn't get super well, didn't get great reviews. But this one does have pretty good reviews. But it just can't. Its legacy is in the Prestige shadow, and there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You might think that's fair or not, but that's just that's what it is. So yeah, I find it interesting. If it wasn't for this theme this month, I don't know we would get around to covering this movie, because by most metrics, it's well received. Let's talk about it. It's released August 18th, 2006. Like most of the movies we're covering this month, it beats the Coca-Cola movie to the punch. This comes out first by a couple months. It's made on a budget of $16.5 million. Like I said, this is an independent feature. At the box office, it brings in $87.8 million. Pretty good return on that size budget. Critically, it's well received. It has a 73% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences love it too. It has an 83% audience score. We got a well-received movie on our hands, Andrew.
That is impressive. I didn't realize it was that high. By comparison, The Prestige holds a 76% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 92 audience score. So these are really a little not higher, that far
but pretty
apart.
Close. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the box office on The Prestige is also 40 million versus 109 million box office. So it's actually, there's an argument to be made that The Illusionist is the more successful film in terms of profit. So I'm just saying, maybe the wrong movie's the Coke here. I'm kidding. I'm kidding, folks. I'm kidding. But I was very interested in looking at those numbers, and I was kind of surprised. I felt like The Prestige made more money than that. But it also kind of feels, it's profitable. It makes money. It's super well received. But it's interesting to kind of see how it kind of reminds me of like when you look at that movie. I don't know if you remember a movie called Knowing.
Nicolas Cage movie?
Yeah, it was a no, not Knowing. What am I thinking of? It was the John Cusack disaster movie.
2012.
2012, yes. That movie made $800 million at the box office.
$800 million?
Yes. I was confusing it with Knowing. But you see, I never, like, if you asked me how much money that sci-fi action film starring John Cusack made in 2009, directed by Roland Emmerich, I would have been like, I don't know, 300, like just whatever, like a decent return. But it made almost $800 million. It was the 5th highest grossing film of 2009.
I had no idea. And it has, I'm not insulting the movie. It just kind of speaking on how surprising this is. It has no legacy. No one remembers that.
No one has any idea. So I always tend to think of like, so I thought The Prestige, so The Illusionist is kind of sitting in this similar space for me where like my brain is like, doesn't think about it. So I assume it must have not have done super well. But then I look at it, I'm like, oh, The Illusionist actually did pretty well by most metrics. You know, it's not a massive box office, but given its budget, it's a pretty sizable return. Yeah, I always love looking that fact. Like, you know, I know I forgot the name of the movie, so it can't be that important to me. But like because I looked at Knowing, and like Knowing did not make a lot of money, and I was like, okay, this can't be it. But yeah, so that is 2012 is the 5th highest grossing film of that year. Number 4 was Transformers 3 or 2, whichever one Revenge of the Fallen is. Number 3 that year is Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs, which made $886 million.
Oh my God.
You want to talk about another franchise that I have no awareness of and no realization of how successful it was? Ice Age. And then number 2 and number 1 were Harry Potter 6 and Avatar. Which,
those aren't surprising.
No shock.
But,
yeah, not shocking.
Wow.
But it's like we talk about like 2000, where like What Lies Beneath was in the top 10. And we're like, man, I didn't even think about What Lies Beneath. How did this end up here? So it's always wild to me to think about stuff like that. But The Illusionist is definitely not like that. Or it is sort of like that because it was super profitable. Like my brain was just, I guess, assuming I was Pepsiing it myself, like to a lower, I was turning it into like Diet Pepsi, not even allowing it to
Crystal
be Pepsi.
Pepsi.
And Crystal Pepsi, Pepsi Blue, something like that, where I'm even lowering the level further. But yeah, interesting to look at those numbers. And yeah, John Cusack is in a movie that made $800 million at the box office. Good for him.
This movie is actually based on a short story by Stephen Milhauser. It was published in 1990 as part of a collection of short stories. Didn't realize that until I was researching this. Didn't know it was based on anything, but it is written and directed, of course, adapted and directed by Neil Berger. A name I didn't recognize right away, but you dig into the filmography. Before this, really just has one indie movie called Interview with the Assassin, but would go on to break into Hollywood with movies like Limitless, which is probably his most successful film, Divergent, which kicks off that young adult novel adaptation series. He did The Upside, that Kevin Hart, Bryan Cranston feel-good movie. I don't know, I didn't see that one, but got some notable movies under his belt. Definitely this was his kind of step into greater success and into that Hollywood circle.
Yeah, Limitless is definitely the big one here that I remember. That was another weird one. I remember that one coming out and seeing it, and that was another one that kind of took me by surprise. But yeah, he was also a director and an executive producer on the Showtime show Billions with the greatest actor of all time, Paul Giamatti, who, fun fact, we'll be talking about in a little bit. But yeah, still out there. Just directed The Marsh King's Daughter, which is a kind of a psychological thriller with Daisy Ridley and Ben Mendelsohn, a couple of others. Basically has a movie out every few years. So still out there doing his thing. But you got to believe that this one kind of started putting him on the map for people with, small budget, big success financially, good reviews, and still out there. So good for him.
No superhero movie yet, but I feel like it's inevitable, right? This is the career path.
After Limitless, I thought he would have been an interesting pick for like a Flash movie, just because of the way the visual effects were factored into Limitless, which, do that same thing you did on another movie with another character that you didn't create. Because that's what your film fan brain says things like that, and you think it's this like groundbreaking thing where you're like, oh yeah, man, that guy that made that movie where things slow down and stuff, he should make a Flash movie. It's like, yeah, you're asking him to make the same movie again.
Yeah, just the most basic A to B.
Yeah, it's literally somebody. It's like like looking at like the director of Waterworld should make an Aquaman movie. I was like, yeah, because there's water in it. Like that's. But you, as the film fan, the true Kino fan, go sit back and go, I'm the best at this. I don't know how people aren't hiring me to do this.
I'm limitless. I can see
you're not
capable of.
You're not. We're not that good. Also, you don't know as much as you think you do. That's just a fact. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, I was super, super impressed with all the stuff that I've seen from him. I haven't watched a whole lot of this. I did actually just buy The Marsh King's Daughter in some recent FanFlix thing, just because there's murder in it. So it means I'm going to have to investigate it and find out who did it, because I can't not do that. But everything I've seen of his, for the most part, I enjoy. So this is no exception, dare I say.
Well, with that said, Andrew, let's jump into it. Talk about everything we like, all the positives of The Illusionist. You ready?
Yeah.
In the late 1800s, a young man named Edward Abramovich leaves Vienna to learn to be a great magician. He returns years later as Eisenheim the Illusionist and finds that his childhood love, Sophie, is engaged to marry the cruel Crown Prince Leopold. Secretly, Eisenheim and Sophie plan to run away together, but when Chief Inspector Yule learns of their affair, he informs the Crown Prince. Sophie's body is found lifeless after a fight with Leopold, and an investigation begins to find the culprit behind the murder. Meanwhile, Eisenheim focuses on bringing back the souls of the deceased on stage and becomes the talk of the town. When Sophie's spirit manifests on stage and accuses the prince of the murder, the chief inspector takes a closer look at Eisenheim's performance. ... There's a lot more to it, but that's kind of like the whole twist in the movie, so we'll get to it when we go through this film. But before we get to all that, you know what we're going to do? We're going to talk about the cast of the film, as we always do, starting with the high point, starting with the best performance in the movie, because every episode we recognize one person who goes so far above and beyond the call of duty that they actually elevate the quality of the entire film with their performance, and we recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. So, Andrew, kick us off. Who is getting your Mark Strong Award for The Illusionist?
There's so many options here because there's a lot of really good stuff. There's a really good villain. There's a really good hero. There's really good stuff all around. Um, I'm giving it to the GOAT, Paul Giamatti, as Chief Inspector Walter Rule.
1,000%. Also getting my Armstrong Award. He rules at everything that he's in. I love the show. We talked about it before, but he's so good in this movie.
He's so good. So he starts off, in the relationship between him and Eisenheim, Edward, is very frosty because we're just going to call him the Chief Inspector. The Chief Inspector is essentially working with Crown Prince Leopold, who's got this big conspiracies unfolding, and Leopold also really doesn't like the Illusionist. It's he's really not a fan of him. So the Chief Inspector is working with him at the beginning, so they've kind of both double teaming this guy and trying to kind of shut him down and get rid of him. But as the movie unfolds, basically Eisenheim and the Chief Inspector end up kind of working together and kind of crack what's happening here before we kind of shift almost exclusively to essentially Ole's perspective, Chief Inspector's perspective. Like, he carries essentially the last third of this movie. And as he makes his realizations, as he's coming to all the different, piecing it all together and realizing what's happened, it's just great. Paul Giamatti is fantastic. He's fantastic in everything. The Holdovers, his recent film that I've talked about before, is just in my rotation now. I watch it like all the time. It's just unbelievable how it just sits in my brain.
I haven't watched it yet. I gotta check it out. I've heard nothing but
he's so good in it.
Stuff.
It's a very comforting movie. I wouldn't say it's, the greatest film of all time, but it's very comforting. It's very cozy. A term that Paul Giamatti doesn't mind, but apparently Alexander Payne does. But who cares? But he's fantastic here. I kind of didn't know he was in this. And then he showed up, and I was like, man, it's the GOAT. And reaffirms that status throughout the entirety of this entire movie. And it is absolutely fantastic. So I 100% Mark Strong, Paul Giamatti as the Chief Inspector.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, we talked about him before. Lady in the Water, he definitely picked up a Mark Strong Award there. So he is now a 2-time Mark Strong Award winner. Deservedly so.
Unfortunately, there's no way to check.
This one, is Lady in the Water. Who else were we going to give it to? I'm hashtag PP. I'm certain you picked it up there.
Dang, dude, you're going to piss off that one really hard Lady in the Water fan in our Discord.
Apologies. Hashtag PP once again. But as I said there, I love that he is a normal looking dude who is just insanely talented. He doesn't inherently look like a movie star. I love this type of actor where it's just their innate talent that has got them where they are. Like Philip Seymour Hoffman, I would describe in the same way. Just so good in everything that they do. And I struggle a lot with period pieces, especially like Victorian era, or we get as far back where I'm not picking apart the movie, but I think the movie takes place in Austria. We're speaking English, but it's got to be an accent, but that's not even the language you speak there. So it's just like this vaguely period piece accent. I don't know how to describe it. It bothers me a lot. It takes me out a lot. I can't help but focus on it. But he is someone that can slide into something like this and instantly fits in that world. It's believable. However he is deciding to talk, yeah, I believe that's how people are talking at that time. It totally works. But he's not one of those actors that I can only picture in a period piece, because you see him as something, modern day, Lady in the Water, Big Fat Liar, Sideways. He's great there. I really like him in Man on the Moon. Honestly, I don't know. I guess Jim Carrey kind of has to get it, but you know how much of a jerk he was. It's hard to give it to him. But a really good performance there. Yeah, he's great. Easily getting my Mark Strong Award. No disrespect to everyone else in this cast, but he's just, man, he's so
on another
good.
level. He is on another level.
Absolutely.
He is so good. And even talking about that, The Holdovers takes place in the 70s, and he has no issue just sliding into this other era. And I think it's the 70s in the East Coast, so it's a lot easier to slide into than unnamed Eastern European accent in the 1880s. But man, it's tough because it almost feels backhanded to be well, he looks like a normal guy. We're basically saying that he doesn't look chiseled like a movie star, but but it also just like you said, it's just raw talent at that point. And it's an ability to kind of inhabit a role, to inhabit a character, and do it in a way that no matter what he's doing, it's believable. Even his insanely over the top Rhino in Amazing Spider-Man 2 is exactly what it was calling for.
I love it.
I mean, he was Jerry Heller in Straight Outta Compton. I mean, he's done it all. I mean, he's literally, there's nothing he can't do. And I am just really glad that he's out there doing his thing. I'm glad you agree with me on this. It's fine when we disagree, Chris, but when we do align on the Mark Strong, it makes me feel good.
I'm glad, Andrew. I could do that for you. All right. Now that brings us to the titular illusionist. That is Edward Norton playing Eisenheim. Edward Norton, I feel like we've talked about him before. Is he an alum of the show? Gotta be, right?
You would think. Unfortunately, there's also no way to check this.
No way.
There is no way to investigate, see what he's done. Let's see. Did we do a best of the best for Glass Onion?
That's what it is. It is. Yeah, I know we talked about him on Might before. Yes. All right. Here's my thing on Edward Norton. He's great in Glass Onion. I really like him in Fight Club. He's great in Death to Smoochie. But I can't. He's a great actor. It's undeniable. But sometimes he's in a role and it doesn't work for me. It doesn't click for me. It's not like in the same league as some of the performances I just mentioned. And I don't think it's a case of him phoning it in. I think he's a very dedicated actor. And from all the stories I've heard, like he would never phone it in, not really his style. I think what it is, Andrew, there's something, I don't know if off-putting is the right word, but like he has a unique voice and look. He's kind of, even when he's ripped, he's kind of scrawny on the slimmer side. Something about him is inherently like either untrustworthy, so I think he's great as a bad guy, or I think he's great in like Death to Smoochie or Glass Onion, where he's a coward, a bit of a weasel. I think he plays those roles so well.
Chris, you ever seen Primal Fear?
I have not.
You should.
Okay, good Edward Norton performance.
I'm not giving you any more information.
Okay, I will check it out.
No, I agree with what you're saying, though. Based off of nothing except what you were saying, I think you should watch Primal Fear. But I like how it's funny because when you first started talking about that, I was just kind of like, yeah, Edward Norton acts like a douche. Like he just looks like a douche. But Edward Norton looks like the kind of guy that if I saw him on the street, I would just be like, you look insufferable. But no, I'm kidding. Obviously, I have no idea. I've heard generally good things about the man. I know there's whatever, but yeah, it's weird. There's just a weird air about him. So like you said, when he's playing those kind of duplicitous characters, when he's kind of playing characters that are like purposely kind of like you said, cowardly or a little bit more docile, or there's the kind of that kind of hidden piece. I think it works better when he kind of like him as the Hulk is always just kind of strange to me.
I mean, we might actually cover that on this podcast one day. I don't know, but
one
like
day.
that's an example where like this isn't working. And look, hashtag
he's a great actor
here in The Illusionist. I'm not clicking. Like it seems like he's hiding something. And I know he kind of is The Illusionist, but like there's nothing menacing underneath. But I get the feeling that there should be. Like whenever he's just like the white meat baby face, whenever he's just like the hero, just the good guy, I can't buy into it. And I can't tell you exactly why. Maybe it's a me thing, but it's just not my favorite roles of his when he's doing that.
I'm not saying it's just a you thing, but it's not just a you thing.
Okay. So. I generally like what he's doing here, but that's my big Edward Norton take. While we're talking about the character, Aaron Johnson plays a young Edward. In that flashback scene, I was watching this with a friend of the show, my wife, and I was like, is that Kick-Ass? She's like, I was about to ask the same thing, because he's so young. I mean, this is maybe the youngest I've seen him. Alum of the show, we talked about him Kick-Ass 2, and I think some other stuff. But this is pre Aaron Taylor Johnson. This is just Aaron Johnson. I don't know. Does a good job as young Edward. I just wanted to shout it out because it's Aaron Johnson.
Cool little fact.
Yeah, fun.
Cool little fact. Yeah. Not his first movie, oddly enough. He actually also plays Charlie Chaplin in Shanghai Nights. I feel like I knew that.
I do remember that, yeah.
And that's 3 years before this.
He's like a little kid.
Yeah, he's like a child. In 1990, that was 2000. He was 13 in Shanghai Nights.
That was one of my pandemic watches. I watched Shanghai Noon and Shanghai. I just watched a lot of Jackie Chan, but I did Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights, and it's pretty good. But yeah, he's Charlie Chaplin, but he's like a little kid. It's before he's like, the Charlie Chaplin. And like literally the end of that movie is like he sneaks off in the back of a carriage and he pokes his head out, and like he just like scratches his lip and accidentally gets grease and makes a mustache. That's the last little joke in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, just a fun little bit. Not a whole lot going on here, but he's just fine.
Jessica Biel plays Duchess Sophie. Also, alum of the show. Talked about her back on Blade, Trinity, and I'm sure I praised her there. I'll do it again here. I think she's a great actor. I think she had a really solid run around this time. Has really slowed down in her acting and transitioned to producing a lot of work. Seems to be like a second career path or maybe a passion of hers that she's discovered. She showed up recently in that limited series Candy. I know, again, friend of the show, my wife, she watched that. The bits I saw, like she was putting in another solid performance. Still has it. And I really like her here. I think compared to some of the other roles we're talking about, not given a whole lot to do, not really in a sidelining our female actors kind of way. It's a super small cast. There's only like a handful of roles. There's not a lot to it, but she's doing a good enough job.
Yeah, I agree. She's doing exactly what she's been. Yeah, this was her kind of transitioning out of the seventh heaven thing and kind of actually using that to launch into some big film roles. And I think she was pretty successful at that. I do also want to shout out Eleanor Tomlinson, who plays the young Sophie von Teschen. She's been in a variety of different shows, some Doctor Who stuff, some Agatha Christie's, a couple of TV shows lately as well, so still out there doing her thing. But yeah, Jessica Biel doing exactly what needs to be done here.
Rufus Sewell plays Crown Prince Leopold.
What a jerk. Like, he's...
this isn't an official thing, but probably my runner-up for the Mark Strong Award.
Giamatti. Absolutely.
So good.
Absolutely.
Talk about someone that... I mean, I haven't seen every movie that he's in, but talk about someone that can only play a villain. I mean, look at this guy. Look at his eyes. Like, he just looks like a mean bastard. Kind of an alum of the show, Andrew, because he was an Old, which we discussed in our big M. Night Shyamalan episode,
where he also plays a jerk.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess so. He's, I mean, I'm not gonna go off on a huge Old tangent. I agree. He's pretty menacing in that movie. The thing I most know him from, though, has got to be A Knight's Tale. Again, yeah, he's the bad guy. But yeah, this dude's. I think it's in the eyes, but really his whole performance. He's just. I don't trust him, Andrew. I don't trust this guy. So good at playing the villain. I really like. I mean, he's awful. Like, his whole thing is that, like, he beats women. That's like his reputation. We see him strike Jessica Biel here. He's a bad guy, but he's so good at it.
He's extremely good at it. What was the other thing that I know him from? Man in the High Castle, the Amazon Prime adaptation of the Philip K. Dick story or novel of the same name. He is also quite the jerk there. He also, what was it I was just looking at? What other people may actually know him from is a film called Dark City, which I don't know why it didn't occur to me to do Dark City on our Pepsi month. But it does
what is it?
get Matrix. Dark City gets a lot of comparisons to The Matrix.
Like it comes out like 3 years before. I know we did Small Soldiers, Toy Story, but comes out like 3 years, like 96, right?
No, it's 98.
Is it really? I thought there was a
The
bigger
Matrix.
gap
The
between those
Matrix
two.
is March 99.
Okay.
Dark City is February 98. So there's about a year between, but there were a lot of comparisons between those. But he essentially plays the hero in that movie, like as such as a hero is in that movie. But it's one of the only things I really remember seeing him in where I was like, oh, you're like just a dude here. And it's so jarring because you're just waiting. It's kind of like you're just waiting for nope, I don't trust you, man. I don't know. I don't believe you want the good things to happen. I don't want this. I don't believe you're going to do this. And so he's pretty solid in that too, though. So he does have some range, but man, that guy is too good at playing the bad guy. Knight's Tale, I think, is where everybody mostly know him from. So I think he plays, God, what is that character's name? The Black Prince, I think his name is actually has a name, I'm sure. But no, Count Adamar. The Black Prince is somebody else. But yeah, I remember Knight's Tale. I was like, I hate you, man. You're the worst. Genuinely the worst. I never want to see you again. And then he kept showing up on my screen and he won't stop doing it. So clearly he's not listening. I don't know what else to do.
I've really come to appreciate about acting is that, I don't know, it's really like over the course of the show that I've really kind of dialed into this. You think of acting as like, you think of like if you have good range, that means you're a good actor. You can play anything, but that's not. I find more and more that's not really the case. Like it's good to have range; it is a good quality, but it's not the yardstick to measure by. A lot of it is just learning how to utilize your natural energy and charisma. Like Rufus Sewell obviously knows he's good at playing villains, right? And I'm not saying he can never be a straightforward hero or love interest in rom-com, but he knows how to enhance what he naturally has. I mean, A Knight's Tale, you swap Heath Ledger and Rufus, it doesn't work. Like those like Heath Ledger's smile, that's your good guy. Rufus's eyes, that's your bad guy. Like they just know how to utilize what they naturally have. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I didn't used to think of acting in that way. I used to always think of like, it's all about your performance and what you bring to it. But a lot of it is just like how you look or
presence,
how you naturally get your presence. Yeah. Things that you could influence, but ultimately can't totally control.
I mean, in wrestling, we often call this, they just have it.
Yeah.
They have that kind of intangible, that je ne sais quoi, if you will. That kind of, you can't really define it, but it's a presence. Like, people talk about that, like Jay Cargill is somebody where they talk about the presence that she has.
Yeah.
She's not the greatest worker in the world, but the presence she has commands attention. And then you sit and think to yourself, I bet she could carry me like a baby. And you start having a lot of questions to yourself. But it's sometimes like that, where I'm shocked Rufus hasn't played like a comic book villain in something. Like I feel like he's another guy that's just like begging for it. Like he's a guy that like, and he may have, like, was he on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that? I feel like there's something he might have been on that I sort of remember, but looking at his filmography, it doesn't look like it.
A good Doctor Doom.
He would.
Oh man, that's my new fan cast for that role.
That's how old is he? He's 56, but who cares? Pedro Pascal is almost 50. But yeah, like there's, like you said, there's a presence he has. Doctor Doom would be good. I'm sure there's a Batman villain somewhere that he could do. Even if it's one of like just the standard human guys, just the intensity that he brings to it. Like I would
Victor
have no
Zsasz?
issue. Maybe good choice. Hugo Strange, maybe. I don't know how he looks bald. It's a tough question. It's tough to guess how somebody looks bald, but yeah, just like I could genuinely like just the smoldering intenseness of Rufus's look. I don't have any issue seeing that like face to face with Batman. It wouldn't seem out of place to me at all. Like there's definitely actors where like they're standing across from Batman and you're like, yeah, Batman's gonna beat this guy up. There's no question here. I would not think that looking at these two together, and I would be like, whew. I would almost be like, Well, Batman, you might want to pack this one in.
Look at those eyes. Come on.
Look at those eyes, man. You can't touch that.
All right, Andrew. Like I said, pretty tight cast. I mean, there's other small parts, but we've hit all of our main players here. So that means it's time to jump into the scenes of this film. And of course, as we do, we're going to start with the best scene of the movie, or at the very least, our personal favorite. So, Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What's the best scene in The Illusionist?
This is kind of tough because I kind of like all of these scenes. I really like the scenes where he's genuinely performing. I think kind of seeing the audience react to it, kind of seeing what the presentation is like. And I think the one I got to go with is the one where he like purposely like humiliates the Count, where he kind of like purposely puts him on display, or the Crown Prince rather, not the Count. Sorry, I'm getting my movies. I'm getting my Rufus roles mixed up here, but he basically like it's spinning out of this kind of obsession that the Crown Prince has with Eisenheim or Edward, whatever you want to call him, with kind of just this like it's he can't figure it out, and it's kind of like driving him crazy. So like genuinely, the first bit of this movie just really feels like the entire plot is going to be driven by the fact that this prince just really doesn't like magic. Like he hates it. Like it felt like Arrested Development there for a minute, where I was just waiting for Eisenheim to be like, illusions, prince, tricks are what a whore does for money. But
I said that joke in my head so many times watching this movie.
Every time he said illusions, I was just like, yep, there it is.
Illusions, Leopold.
Illusions, Leopold. It's like I don't have time for your tricks. Illusions, Leopold. You don't have time for my illusions. But I love this particular sequence. Again, you've seen Eisenheim kind of on display at this point, how he just kind of wows audiences, and it's all tricks. He tells everybody it's just illusions. He purposely sets up something to make the Crown Prince look stupid. He does this trick with his sword, where he kind of sticks it in and nobody's able to mess with it. And then he finally kind of tests the Crown Prince on it. And it's just kind of, it's an interesting kind of back and forth, because there's obviously very clear tension here. The Leopold has brought him here with this kind of idea that he just wants like a private performance, wants a private demonstration. And the minute he's kind of put on the spot and essentially admittedly humiliated, he's kind of like, all right, the party's over, closes it down. He's the guy that rage quits the game when he's losing. He unplugs the controllers. So he then bans him basically from performing in Vienna after this, works with the chief inspector to essentially get his performances shut down. And this is why there's a guild of magicians that work together just in case of unfair things like this, and they demand to be taken seriously. But anyway, this whole sequence is great. I love it. It's kind of the next evolution of everything that Eisenheim has been doing through the movie to this point. It furthers that tension between Leopold and Eisenheim. I feel so weird to call him Eisenheim, but it also feels weird to just call him Edward. But
I mean, that's what
his name is, Edward, but or Edward, I don't know. But anyway, it's a great sequence. It's the way it unfolds, and then ultimately how it impacts the plot moving it forward. And it is ultimately what drives the Duchess character also back to Eisenheim, which unfolds our plot to get her away from the Crown Prince, because he's mean.
He is. He's not a good guy, and she knows it.
He's not. Everyone knows it.
Yeah,
I knew it the minute I saw him on my screen. There's no way.
We don't victim blame here, but like, what are you doing there, Jessica Biel? You know this about him. Why you agreed to marry the guy?
Maybe she saw Dark City instead of Knight's Tale first, and so there was a belief that maybe he was okay. But anyway, I love the sequence. I love all these sequences of him just doing the illusions. I think it's really cool, and it makes it like it makes it very different from The Prestige. Like your brain just kind of wants to attach it all together, but it's very different in all the illusions these men are doing. No tricks here.
I do like this scene. I like this rivalry between Leopold. I don't know if rivalry is the right word, but between Leopold and Eisenheim, because so much of it is unsaid. They never really confront each other. They never say, I hate you, get into a fist fight. it's always, well, it's usually in front of a crowd, so like they can't do that kind of thing. So Eisenheim is just doing a trick, just doing a demonstration. No one can pick it up. And then whenever Leopold was like, all right, well, that's the end of the trick, right? And tries to get a sword back, he still can't lift it. And the crowd is laughing. We know what's happening. We know he is humiliating him. He doesn't like being played for a fool. And whenever Eisenheim, whenever he first sees Eisenheim shows, and he's like, oh, well, this is how you did that trick. This is how you did that trick. Like, he's trying to dress him down to be like, yeah, you're not that impressive. But he's doing it just in a very patronizing way. Again, it's so much that's unsaid between them that I really like. Kind of leaves up to the audience to kind of put together, like, I see what's happening here between these two gentlemen. And that's never more true than the scene you have highlighted, Andrew. So I do think that is a good pick. Now, I'm about to just throw a huge wrench into this episode, Andrew. When I first saw this movie, I think I maybe said this in the intro, I rented it. I didn't like it. And this was my first time watching it in almost 20 years, probably, at least 15 years. And I knew the things I didn't like before, but I tried to just put them out of my head. I've changed a lot. Let's watch this movie again. I don't like this movie. And I know this isn't very hashtag PP, but you know what? This is a very well-received film. It doesn't need me defending it. Andrew, you've clearly enjoyed it. That's great. I've got to tell you why.
Well, tell me what I enjoy, Chris.
I've got to tell you why I don't like it. I'm glad you have more these positive. You said you liked the movie. That's all I'm saying.
I thought we were supposed to be positive here.
I know. I'm glad you are. And I will get to the positives. I can't. I'm not going to lie to you people. It's totally a me thing. Kind of like what I was saying about Edward Norton's performance earlier. The fact that all the illusions in this movie are just CG movie tricks and not actual illusions that can be performed drives me insane, and I can't get past that. It ruins my experience watching the movie. I mean, there are things like there's an orange tree that he makes grow that is technically based on a real illusion, but they just recreate it with CGI, and then they have these little birds carry a thing that's impossible, carry a little handkerchief. There's a thing where like he's throwing an orange. Hang on, let me finish.
It's butterflies.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Now it's plausible.
If you're going to rage against this movie, get it right.
He's tossing an orange from one hand to the other, and then he's able to drop it in slow motion. Drop it upwards in slow motion. He's got this illusion where he's making these spirits come out on stage, which is, it looks a lot cleaner, but it is possible. But then they walk through the audience. There's one outside at one point. None of this is possible. It's just CG. There's a big twist. I won't get to that part yet. I'll just talk about the illusions for now. The fact that these aren't real illusions, even in this. My third note here watching the movie is magic is just real in this movie, I guess. Like, it's just presented as real. It breaks the movie for me. But Andrew, I Googled it. I wanted to read some reviews, some other thoughts. I'm not the only one who feels this way. That's something that's been brought up, and I've seen some discussions, and people are like, yeah, what's the deal with this? These aren't real illusions. Like, what are we supposed to believe? Is it supernatural? And the people that like the movie are just like, it doesn't bother me. I don't know. I like the movie. And I'm like, well, I'm just sitting here like, well, I'm clearly not going to read anything that makes this movie suddenly click for me. It just doesn't. It just doesn't click for me. To compare it to The Prestige, which I'm not saying this movie's bad at all. I'm not saying I don't like this movie because I like The Prestige. I'm just using it as an easy reference point with this issue I have. The illusions presented in The Prestige, you see how most of them are done. There's an in-world explanation for all of them. It all fits in the logic of that world. I just can't make everything fit together in this movie, and it ruins my watching experience. And I just had to say that. Hashtag
Well,
big ol' hashtag
folks,
PP here.
I mean, I feel like that's the end. We
I mean,
found the
Andrew,
movie
like
that it's my turn to talk. I
okay,
just let you
you're
talk
right.
for like 2 years.
You're right.
We
You're
found
right.
the movie that Chris doesn't have anything positive to say about.
I have positives. But I had to
You
address
just heard
these.
everything that I heard. This was news to me. He did not prepare me for this before we went to record. He sprung this on me, so I'm just as shocked as all of you. Please don't assume that Chris speaks for myself. He does not. I assure you. I apologize that this deep into this journey, Chris has betrayed you all like this. It's it's a shock for me, folks. So all we can do is power forward, and we will rebuild.
Let me get to some positives here. Starting
Jesus.
with the cinematographer of this movie, Dick Pope. I think this movie looks amazing.
It does.
I mean, they really go for it. And I talked earlier, this is an independent movie. If it was a Hollywood movie, I don't think it would look like this. I think you can take an ambitious swing like this. I think it's got to be outside the Hollywood system because it looks like it. Can't say it looks like it was filmed in the 1800s because that's not really possible to look this way. But it looks old. It looks a little washed out. A lot of yellows. And it's not, I didn't find it distracting. I found it pretty immersive. It totally worked. Specifically, what really did it for me is what I'm going to highlight as my favorite scene is the flashback whenever the chief inspector is giving the backstory of Eisenheim when he's a young kid, when he's played by Aaron Johnson. It gets even more degraded. It gets really sepia tone. The edges of the frame get really black, like it can hardly focus on the entire frame. It looks really old. I love this little effect here. Like the movie already looks old, and then it gets even older for this flashback. Fantastic. To me, it doesn't feel gimmicky or forced. I am kind of curious how they got, if this was all in post, if they used some older cameras, if what kind of film they used. Not sure what all went into it, but absolutely great work by Dick Pope. I look it up and down his filmography. Not a whole lot I recognize, but I did see The Way of the Gun, which it's an early McQuarrie movie. Also has a pretty distinct look. I like the way this, different than this, but he seems to do what works for the story being told. Did get an Academy Award nomination for this movie, The Illusionist. Very well deserved because the look of this film is my favorite thing about it. So for that reason, the flashback where they go really hard on those effects, I'm going to highlight as my favorite scene. Really enhances the movie.
Great pick. It is this is a great sequence. I completely agree with you. I was just looking at his filmography as well. He was the cinematographer on a film called Dark City, but not that Dark City.
Oh,
which I find
what a
funny.
coincidence.
There's a lot of pretty interesting movies in his career. Other stuff that's just like he did Man of the Year, that weird Robin Williams like political satire film. He shot that, which I don't remember having a unique look at all, but I guess that kind of means he adapts to the project, which, to be fair, is exactly what you're supposed to do. But I think this is a great sequence. Like you said, this movie looks very interesting. It's very striking from kind of the beginning, the way it's kind of presented, and I like that a lot. So I'm glad you were able to dig deep within yourself and find something positive to say about this movie.
I also really like the score, Andrew, by Philip Glass, who I swear we've talked about before.
Yes, because Philip Glass rules, man.
He does. Did he do that song from Watchmen? Like, he doesn't score Watchmen, but that song, was that Philip Glass? Is that when we talked about him? That plays during the Dr. Manhattan sequence?
Oh, is that him? Oh, is it? Hold on. He also, Prophecies and Pruitt Ego from, oh God, how do you say that?
It's him.
Kianis Quatsi.
Okay.
Yeah, that is probably his most famous score individually. It is Very, very good. So Watchmen aping the works of a better artist is not at all shocking. I'm kidding. Hashtag BP.
Well,
But
he's an insanely accomplished composer, not just a film score guy.
Like if you look at his works page, like music for like film and television scores is like
way down at the bottom.
It's like in the bottom third. Like there's works for the ensemble, operas, chamber operas, solo piano arranged from various sources, 2 or more pianos, quartets, chamber music, solo instruments, symphonies, other works for orchestras. Like it's kind of nuts, all the things that he has done. We may have talked about him on Fan 4 Stick because he did come in to do music on that film before he kind of got replaced, as with most everybody else, with Marco Beltrami. But he was originally going to score the Josh Trank Fantastic Four film, so we may have mentioned him on that as well.
Also scored Candyman and Secret Window. It is fun. It's like we're talking about the cinematographer. It is funny to see like the works that a composer does. Like, not a lot of rhyme or reason to like genre or quality of film, or it's interesting how they pick their roles or how they get chosen. But yeah, obviously just very good. But the score for this movie, I love that it sounds like a score from the 1800s. It sounds like they're only using instruments of the time, and it's real minimalist, a lot of strings, a lot of violins. It fits all of a piece with the look of this film and the setting. Really good. Definitely stood out.
I agree.
There's plenty of I like the scene that you picked out. I love Paul Giamatti's performance. It's not hard to find positives. It's just the thing that sunk the movie for me all those years ago. I still personally can't get past. Andrew, I'm curious. You're right. I did not tell you beforehand my overall thoughts on this movie. We try to save a lot for the mic. Sometimes I talk about it a little bit. I didn't want to taint this episode from the beginning, but just from a discussion standpoint, what are your thoughts about this big issue I have with the movie? The illusions in this movie, the fact that it's just movie magic. Do you bump against that at all, or is it totally a non-factor for you?
I don't know, and I don't care.
You got to give me more than that, Andrew.
I don't have to give you anything.
Did you?
No,
was it even in your head before I put it there? Like watching this movie, was it something that you were thinking about, or is it like, yeah, I'm accepting this world, this movie, this is what it is?
Sure, a little both. Like obviously, I knew that they weren't real tricks, but I also know that this isn't. I at no point was I taken out of it because of that. But but truly, it just never really hit me, like just watching it. And if I went back and watched it now, it would probably be something where I'd be like, yeah, I guess a little bit. Like, I'd probably see it now, but I still don't know that it would like pull me out of it because, I mean, I guess that's what separates this from something like The Prestige. Because like, in The Prestige, the dude invents a cloning machine. Sorry, spoilers for The Prestige, folks. But like, it's not presenting what they're doing as like real illusions. It's not like implying that there is a science or a logic or even just a performance behind it necessarily. So it is I don't know. I'm not discounting what you're saying. I think it's in the realm of criticisms. It's about as valid as it can be, or about as valid as I'll allow. For the sake of the conversation, but no, I mean, I think it's genuinely like, I'm not going to fault you for that. Like for saying that, you know what, it's a movie priding itself on the fact that all of these are quote unquote real tricks, yet it doesn't actually use any of the real tricks. It doesn't even film any of the real tricks. It's using CG to create real tricks. And so, it may be that you could really do some of this stuff, but you don't. And yeah, on a base level, it just didn't dawn on me. I liked watching the movie, but I wouldn't say I was that, I wasn't that deep into it.
Sure.
But yeah.
Another reason, going down my favorite scene, the flashback, another thing I really like about it is this whole issue I'm having doesn't apply here because it's the chief inspector telling a story. He tells the story of the first time Eisenheim saw a magician, and he makes this thing float, and then the magician disappears. And some people say that even the tree disappeared, and we're seeing the visual, the tree just disappears. And it's like a tall tale. It's being presented as a game of telephone or telling of a legend. And so it's kind of fun to see these impossible things happen because it's this story that's been built up. But I just don't think. Anyway, it works for me there in that segment. I'll say that. That's just the movie it is. I don't know. There's this fantastic YouTube video by one of my favorite YouTubers, Leo Vader. The title is "Were the Magicians in Now You See Me wizards or what?" And it's not a critical video. It's a fun video going through the tricks performed in the movie Now You See Me and how they are insane and impossible and clearly not actually able to be done. Very funny. Highly recommend checking that out if you haven't seen it. Andrew, the twist of this movie, we haven't discussed openly yet, but Sophie and Eisenheim are going to run away together, but then Sophie is killed. We don't see her get killed, but it's strongly implied that the prince kills her. He stumbles into a back alley where she is. She rides off on a horse, her body slumped over. She's found in a river the next day by a search party, dead. The coroner is there. He checks her. She's lying lifeless. Everybody checks her out. It's a dead body. But at the end of the movie, it's revealed that she wasn't dead because Eisenheim gives her something to drink and it brings her back. And then she's alive and they run off together. If it's not obvious, it's another thing I kind of bump against in this movie. But I appreciate the movie having a twist, keeping us in the dark. That is fun. I like the last sequence with the chief inspector, pitting it all together. It's very Usual Suspects. It's shots of him, kind of in awe, and then scenes playing out of what the big twist is. How did you feel about that twist? Did you see it coming? Did you think she was going to be alive?
I did question the death. It felt like if you were going to go that hard and show her genuinely dying, you would not have had it happen off screen. And
yeah.
It felt like a rather inconsequential death for something that was permanent. I have seen movies where they do that, where a character is killed off screen, and it's a little weird. I'm talking about you, the Snowman. But
honestly, I was thinking No Country for Old Men.
And if you want a good movie where that happens, No Country for Old Men. If you want a less good movie where that happens, The Snowman. Character just full on exits the story completely after dying off screen. It's wild, but it is. So I questioned it there to just kind of that seems like a really inconsequential way to do to do that. You figured there'd be at least a little bit more tension to build up. So that gave me pause. I wouldn't necessarily say that I assumed the solution was going to be that she would never die or that it was all staged, but it wasn't out of the question, I guess. But the death itself definitely gave me pause to suggest there was a greater picture or a bigger idea going on there.
Sure. Yeah. When they are looking for her body, there's my favorite shot in the movie. There's this beautiful shot of the forest, these super tall trees. There's a fog. It's shot in that cool old way we were talking about earlier, talking about Dick Pope. And you just see these trees, and then almost all at once, the search party emerges from behind the trees. They were all perfectly hidden behind a tree, and they start walking out, and suddenly the forest is filled with people. Such a cool shot. They really go hard every chance they get, especially when they're out in those woods, to get these cool, captivating shots. But again, I'll say it, I love the look of this movie.
I agree. I think it's a very, very cool looking movie.
And I also love the chief inspector's obsession with the orange tree specifically, how he does that trick. When he first meets Eisenheim, he's asking him, I can keep a secret. Can you tell me? And he doesn't tell him. He has his theories. And then whenever they are playing everybody for a fool whenever they are, they want the chief inspector to start to suspect the crown prince and what he's up to. He hides the information he wants him to see inside a notebook that says the orange tree. Because he knows after Eisenheim disappears from the stage, they go to investigate his workshop. He knows he won't be able to resist picking up that book and like peeking inside. Fantastic little touch.
Yep. Just good stuff brought to life by the GOAT himself. Paul Giamatti.
You a Giamatti? I think I say Paul Giamatti. Giamatti feel right to you? Andrew, I've said enough about this movie. I've said my thoughts.
Yeah, let's get out of here. My God.
There's still plenty to like.
Good Lord.
I'm clearly the minority. It's fine.
Chris, you're
Everyone
white.
loves this movie. It's great. You white? You're Ben Affleck. I even everything I said, I still recommend this movie, especially if like you've seen The Prestige, you've heard the comparisons. I recommend it for the look alone. You will probably find much more to like than I do. There's great performances. Plenty of fun to be had for all.
Yeah. Okay. I guess.
Well, Andrew, I didn't mean to go so hard on that one, but it is what it is.
BS, you didn't mean to go so hard on that one. You knew exactly what you were doing.
You are really the positivity rock this episode, and we love you for it, Andrew. Still loving this month, really loving this theme. Pepsi month is continuing next week with the last movie of the month, Stir of Echoes, the ghost movie from 1999 that got overshadowed by that hugely popular other ghost movie. And this one I'm really excited to revisit because I know I've seen it before. I remember so little about it. I remember liking it, but I remember so little about it. In fact, I believe it was Toby in our Discord who echoed my thoughts perfectly. They're like, I remember liking it. I remember something about fingernails and Kevin Bacon digs a lot. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I remember. Like he's digging a bunch of holes, something about the dead body and fingernails. I don't know. I'm excited to rewatch the movie and put these pieces back together. We'll be breaking that down next week. But for now, it's time for our question of the week. And if you want to leave us a question for a future episode, you can do exactly that. Just hop into our Discord. There's a link in the show notes. What are you waiting for? Come and join us. Leave us a cue, just like that guy in Doom. Here's what they say, Andrew. How do y'all feel about companies when they change opening logos? I, for one, really enjoy it. One of the men in blacks has the Columbia lady do the neuralizer flash. Scott Pilgrim has the 8-bit Universal logo, and I'm pretty sure John Carter had a red Disney castle instead of the typical blue. Oh, and Paramount changing the stars to the rings for Sonic. Always a lovely touch, and makes me feel that they actually do something for each film instead of recycling the opening. Andrew, thoughts? Opening logos, changing them for the movie?
It's great. Next week is Stir of Echoes, folks. We'll see you then.
We'll see you then. Thanks. I agree. This is such an easy. Yes, of course it's
a
awesome.
layup. Yeah.
Imagine not liking that. Imagine being like, "Oh, where's my traditional Universal logo? What is this?" Like,
how dare they? How dare they try to inject some personality into this film beyond? It's nonsense. Like Tron Legacy is one of my favorites, where they do like that's one of my personal favorites, where they do like the digital castle and the grid and just stuff like that. It's fun. Why would you have a problem with that?
The Spider-Verse movies where they rapidly change all the different art styles of the Columbia logo.
He mentions the John Carter one. That's another great one. I love it.
It really makes the movie feel special. And I guess if they literally did it for every movie, we probably wouldn't care as much. Like, oh, what did they decide for this one? Great, I guess it wouldn't be as. You know what? Screw it. No, I wish they did it for every movie. I wish every movie had a personalized opening logo. I think it'd be great.
That would become the whole new thing. Like, you wouldn't have to stay past the credits. You would be staying for the intro and then leaving. You would just be like, what are they going to do with the castle this time, folks? And then you could leave because you'd be like, the movie ain't going to live up to that.
You know what's, a little bit different? The Marvel intro usually changes the scenes they show. They update them a lot. But Black Panther 2, when it was...
Paul Chadwick.
Yeah, that was...
Oh.
And it's like... you're in a theater and there's an emotional moment and you can feel the silence. Like everyone's being quiet, but you can feel have the emotion that you do. Yeah, that all Chadwick thing definitely hit. So a different kind of cool. And
didn't they do one where it was all Stan?
That sounds right. Would that have been Endgame?
Endgame, maybe.
Yeah, because I know he's in Endgame, but I think it came out after he passed away.
Yeah, because Endgame did come out. Yeah, I don't remember when, but I think, or it might have been Captain Marvel. I don't remember what the first one. It might have been Endgame, though. I think it might be Endgame.
Yeah, it's great.
I don't remember. Yeah,
I love them. If you've got some cool examples, I mean, we all know you love it like we do. We don't need to answer to that. But if you have some cool examples of changing that opening logo, what are some of your favorites? Let us know. Hit us up in that Discord or on social media, and come back next week for Stir of Echoes. In the meantime, just remember that maybe not every movie is great.
But all movies have greatness, except this one, apparently.
The cinematography is so cool. Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. You can check him out on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. And thanks to Mitch for the music. Follow him on Twitter at I'm a Biggie Boy and check our show notes for the SoundCloud link. Check out our store on TeePublic for some Best of the Rest merch. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. That's the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.